Tammy DeBruns from Master Control at WPLG TV in South Florida. I've been here for 33 years and you are watching the NAB show live.
Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Craig Adams from CBS 6 WRGB TV in Albany, New York, the world's very first television station. You're watching NAB Show Live.
Back to NAB Show Live, presented by Broadcast Beat. We're looking now at the very crucial topic of sound. It's the red-headed stepchild, isn't it? Images get the attention a lot more than audio, and yet audio has been proven again and again and again to, that was what attracted people to HD. It's a crucial part of virtual reality. It's very important. So we're going to talk about this very important topic. I have directly to my right, Keith Rogers, a re-recording mixer, heading up the creative team at Southlake Audio. And Southlake Audio, I understand, is a union signatory company offering mixing and ADR services in Burbank, and it operates within the parent company, Roundabout Entertainment, correct?
That's correct.
And then next to Keith, I have Paul Rodriguez, who is an executive board member at the MPSE and vice president of Southlake Audio and also vice president of audio services and development at Roundabout, correct?
Correct.
All right.
You did good.
Oh, thank you so much. And I think it behooves me to talk about the fact that MPSE, you had something to do with this, right, Paul, since you're an executive board member, that MPSE and NAB Super Session will take place on Wednesday, 2 to 3, on Sound and Pictures on Star Wars Rogue One in room S222.
And I would encourage everybody to go there. We have the bigger theater this year. For the past four years, we've had we did the last Star Wars in a smaller room, and we could have sold it out 3 times. So who we have are the visual effects supervisors as well as the sound supervisors. So it's a very engaging world of knowing what went into making that movie.
And anybody who saw Rogue One, which I presume is pretty much everybody,
I would think so.
Knows how important the sound was.
George Lucas says sound is 50% of the picture.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, isn't it? Well, he would put it that way.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. And I was already in S222, and it's a big room.
Yeah.
So people have no excuse. There's lots of room in there.
You're scaring me now.
So, Paul, let's talk about trends a little bit. I mean, you've been in the audio business for a long time, right? What are the trends what's going on out there? What are the trends that you see?
Well, I think the trends that we see right now are on the audio side, and that's where we live, have a lot to do with distribution. The studio system has changed. It used to be that producers made movies and then they found a way to distribute them. Now distributors are making movies and they already have the mechanism in which to do it.
Like such as Netflix.
Netflix, Amazon,
right.
And we do a lot of work for them. But that is the new trend, and there are more players. We are actually doing a show for DirecTV. Who'd have thunk that?
Right.
Right. So, I mean, you can imagine the Netflix and the Amazon, who have been around for a long time, but now we have new players, and that could include Hulu and some of the other ones. But the studio system has kind of changed. It's turned around a little bit. And I think that's true of broadcast as well as feature film. And we do both on the sound side.
How does that change with all these new players coming into town?
I think it just means that there's more content, and content is king. It just means that there's more, and for the independent post-production companies like Roundabout, Southlake Audio, is we have access to do more work, and the work is high quality. I mean, when you look at some of the shows like Westworld and
which we're going to talk about in a bit. Yeah.
I'll bet you will.
Oh yeah.
But some of those shows, I mean, it's amazing.
So in other words, for you, it just means more work than ever before.
A little bit. It's also more competition, right. But you try and go for the high quality stuff, and and that's where guys like Keith come in.
And it's interesting because Netflix and Amazon, for example, want the highest quality. They want the HDR. They want the 4K.
I mean, we're talking about working with, producers like J.J. Abrams and, Jonah Nolan. I mean, this is stuff to be proud of.
Exactly.
We're happy.
So talk about it. How does that affect your end?
I think one thing I've noticed on the audio side that's a little different now with, say, a Netflix or that kind of distributor is a lot of times when we were doing broadcast for television, you'd be on a weekly schedule and you're like mixing a show a few days before it airs on television. And with this Netflix model or this kind of online model, we tend to mix a whole season before it even airs.
Right, because of the binge factor. Right?
Yeah, because they release it all at one time.
Yeah.
And it's actually creatively it gives you feel a little bit more. You're more focused because you're not just trying to get a show done every week. You're actually looking at the creative kind of direction of the sound mix.
I mean, that sounds like it would be a real benefit to be able to do it all at once.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Tell me about it.
For me, it's been the best thing for creative mixing because you're not just up against the schedule to get a show done. A lot of times, in that kind of environment, when it's a weekly, network type show, they're chasing visual effects and everything's a rush. It seems like, and in this world, it's in doing a whole season, like say a 10-episode series. You have a little bit more time. You're spending more time with the creative producers and the people, and you're really creating the soundscape, and you have a little bit more interaction. It seems like. So I just find it much more. A much more pleasant and creative environment to work in.
Well, it's interesting because I watch a lot of TV, of course, and I was watching something on one of these non-traditional content creators, and I really noticed the audio. The score was incredible. It did seem like a richer audio experience. Is that? Am I making that up, or is that really what's happening?
I don't think you're making it up. What we get in these non-traditional formats is more time. And more time, I mean, traditionally on the network side, we're, 3 days per episode on the stage. Keith gets 6 days for Westworld. So you get almost twice as much time, and I think that lends to the creative aspect of the show. So these are little movies. We're making movies.
They are.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because, in the golden age of Hollywood, post-production had a huge amount of time, and of course that's been totally collapsed.
That's true.
Because of technology.
Yes.
Yeah. The technology has changed the way that we work, and not necessarily to the greater good, but we're still, the opportunity to have choices is still there. So creative choices still exist, and it will be done when it's done.
Right.
And I also think the creative, the people that are involved in broadcast formats now are feature film quality people. I mean, we have high-end, writers, directors, composers, all kinds of people that are in this market now that used to be a little bit more divided between features and television. Now you're getting top quality people doing broadcast.
So tell me a little bit about Southlake. I know that you're kind of almost like an island in this bigger company that also offers audio services.
Yes.
It seems like it's not a duplication, though, I take it.
Not so much. I mean, we do on the non-union side, we do smaller shows. We do stuff that we've been doing for a long time. A lot of post work, M&Es, stuff like that. We created Southlake to appeal to the higher end, and we.
So you have to be a union signatory.
You do have to be a union signatory for that type of work. So we do a lot of work for the major studios, and it's a separate company, but yet we still all live in the same world. And we just opened a 10,000 square foot facility in Santa Monica.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll have to come visit that.
Yeah. 60,000 square feet in Burbank, 10,000 in Santa Monica.
Wow.
Come on out.
I will. I'll definitely come visit. So talk a little bit about the technology that you're using to, I know we were talking just a bit before we started here about the technology that you're using to achieve these higher end shows.
Yeah, most mixing, I would say, is probably in Pro Tools land. I mean, most mixers for efficiency for time and just the way things are now, where most people are mixing in the Avid Pro Tools environment, and which is fantastic for being able to do a lot in the amount of time that we're given. We're not limited for track space anymore. We're not limited to as much for outboard gear and that kind of thing. It's being in the digital realm, you can set up templates for individual shows that you might have a certain sound design kind of element that you're going for, and you can get into a flow, create a template that gets you up and running really fast. And it's just the thing I like about mixing in the virtual world is the amount of options I can give the client. The client wants. I like to give them as much opportunity to be creative, and in that world, I can give them options. I don't feel like I'm locked into, recording to tape, and in the old days, going to whether it was mag or analog tape, it was a little bit more difficult to present options to a client. Now, it's as easy as having a different session. You can say do different options. You can create a whole nother session, show them a whole different kind of method to a scene, and it's great for being able to give the client a lot of opportunities to be creative.
And are there did Avid unveil any kind of new tools recently for Pro Tools that help that along?
Well, they're always updating. Avid is constantly updating. We just installed an S6 console, two S6s, in one in Santa Monica and one in Burbank, which is their new mixing platform, and it's a great console to work with. There's all kinds of opportunity with that, and then the plugin developers are always coming up with the new reverbs, new EQs and stuff to try. So it's a pretty fun time to be mixing.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
I enjoy it. Yeah.
Are there other trends since you're really hands-on in the field, are there other trends in mixing that you're seeing that are influencing your job?
Well, one that we're starting to get into now. I mixed the first season of Westworld.
Yes, we want to talk about that.
And there hasn't been a lot of the new thing we're talking about is Dolby Atmos for home. Dolby's really pushing that going forward, and I'm going to be remixing season 1 in Dolby Atmos for home.
Tell us a little bit about Dolby Atmos first for the.
It's obviously you can in the feature world they've been mixing in Atmos for years. Dolby's really trying to get the home market going. Instead of just a normal 5.1 audio mix, now you can go to Dolby Home Atmos, and you have object-based mixing where you have, depending on your system at home or how you do it, you have overhead speakers, and maybe depending on there's all kinds of new technology coming out. There's even sound bars that are coming out that have Atmos built into them. There's upwards firing speakers, so you don't have to put speakers in your ceiling at home. I don't know how many.
Are TV set manufacturers going to be putting?
I don't know that, but I would imagine.
You're saying yes, Paul.
I
You
think so? Yes.
Yeah. So it's coming. It's definitely we're feeling that push, and we're thinking that broadcasts, Netflix, Amazon, these kind of companies are about to go Dolby Atmos.
Oh, you think they're going to be adopting that?
Right now they're currently not broadcasting it. It's pretty much just a home video Blu-ray thing you can do. But I think we're right around the corner because of the push for high-end picture. Everything's coming together, and I think
And of course, Dolby is pushing their HDR.
Yeah, and the Dolby Vision
Right.
and that kind of
Which
thing.
is a part of that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, Stars, I think, is has been doing Dolby Atmos for
That's true.
Black Sails and a couple of their other series, and those are flagships. Those are, I mean, they're broadcasting that. So how does it become available to the home viewer? Not quite sure yet, but it is a trend, and a trend that we are, totally involved in.
So they're broadcasting it even though people aren't really able to
Not
receive it yet.
necessarily ready for it,
Well, but it's
But
a
I
little
like
bit
that.
like, it's like HDR too, right? It's the same
exactly.
thing. Well, that's so interesting. Now, you mentioned that, wanted to ask you what set Dolby Atmos apart. You mentioned object-based mixing, is that correct?
Correct,
yeah. Talk a little bit. I mean, what am I going to experience at home if I buy a sound bar?
Well, in a typical, say, 5.1 or 7.1 mix, you have discrete surrounds that are on normally behind you if you're, at home, or and you're going to experience a little bit more of a kind of an inclusive kind of mix where you can put atmospheres above you. You can actually take things off of the screen instead of everything kind of coming at you in left, center, right, left surround, right surround, subwoofer. Now you have a front representation where you can take things off of the screen a little bit. So it's very interesting. Like, say, music is typically mainly left, right with surround kind of fields going, but this new Dolby Atmos actually creates this space that is not normally there, where you can say you can go into a composer's score and say, well, maybe I'm going to take the strings and put the strings kind of maybe a little bit over your head, and then maybe the different elements you can just separate more. So it's I guess they're calling it immersive sound, and that's kind of a good way to describe it. It's immersive, where you're not tied to just everything going from front to the back all the time, or all the surrounds on at the same time, or a discrete sound here and there. You can there's levels of overheads. So it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of opportunity and it's still kind of, the feature guys have been doing it for a while. If you've seen a feature mix, they can really utilize it in lots of great ways.
So, Paul, is it as simple to talk to clients and say it's Dolby Atmos in the theater for the home? Is that the only
We haven't quite got to that part yet, but I think everybody knows what it is. They're all interested in it, and some of the companies are, doing a great job. Like I said about Stars, Game of Thrones was mixed in Dolby Atmos for its last season. So there's a lot of good stuff coming on. But when you talk about a show like Westworld, what an opportunity to
amazing
throw stuff around.
And that was a great show. I mean, tell me a little bit about what is that like mixing for Dolby Atmos with this no pressure, right? Was that the first show that had ever been mixed for Dolby Atmos?
Well, no, like Paul said, I think Black Sails had been mixing that way, and then they'd gone back in and started remixing Game of Thrones, and HBO currently doesn't broadcast in Dolby Atmos, but I was approached by Dolby and Warner Brothers and HBO to upgrade season 1 to Atmos, with hopefully going forward, maybe we will be mixing it in Atmos going forward. So it's been a new experience because the show's already mixed. So now we're going back to the original elements. We're reopening the sessions, going back in, and I have the executive producer Jonah Nolan come in, and we kind of get a model of what we want the Atmos mix to sound like. So and we kind of create a style. It's not just a random thing where I'm going in and saying, oh, that'd be cool if it goes. It's still based on protecting the story at all times. You just don't go and fly stuff around just because you have it. Jonah's just such a creative guy, but he's very focused on telling a story. So
how do you create a style? I mean, for Westworld, what was the style that you created?
Well, it's about atmospheres. Westworld's very, very much a show about dynamics. There's a lot of subtleties that are very we create a lot of moods with the show, a lot of ambiances that are there that are sometimes almost sound like backgrounds, but it's actually score. There's things like that are going on that kind of create a mood and make the viewer try to kind of question where they are, because there's a lot of time jumping in the story. So depending on where we are in the time frame, we might treat the sound differently.
It's a show where you're not sure what you're looking at a lot of the time, right?
So
what was the experience like for you? Was it? I imagine
watching the show or mixing the show,
fixing the show, remixing it from scratch.
Well, it's fun. When we were going through, I purposely, I had mixed the pilot about a year before it originally till it aired, and then as the show went on, there was so much mystery in what was happening with the story that I actually didn't pre-watch the shows. I actually started mixing and treated it like I was a first-time viewer, and so on the first day when I'm going through pre-mixing the dialogue, I'm actually reacting to story things, and I think that's a neat advantage to have, because you react differently. You're not you don't know what's going to happen, so you're not already just reacting that way. I try to first time through try to experience what the first time viewer is going to experience.
So is that your secret trick to doing this?
Well, it's just the way I do it. I don't know if anybody people might watch the show and try to predetermine what they're going to do, but I like to mix and react off of what I'm seeing, and then kind of go off of it. And then obviously it's a process with the producers and what they want as well. It's not always up to me. I'm an extension of what they want.
Right, of course. And do you believe, Paul, that TV is just gonna go this way, or with some kind of enhanced audio that's more object based?
I hope so. I hope so, because it gives us more opportunity to be more creative. It gives an audience more opportunity to be enhanced by that sound process. When Keith says that it's immersive sound, it truly is. And it's a sound process that we feel in the theaters, but now we can feel this at home. And I like that. I think it's a great opportunity to enjoy our entertainment on a higher level. Of course, I'm a sound guy, so I'm saying that.
I'm a late adopter of technology for good reason, I think, but this is something that I would get a sound bar if I could hear improved audio. I think it's worth it.
And I've heard they're really good. I haven't heard one yet. You have.
I have, yeah.
But the fact that technology is coming out and it's relatively cheap, and you don't have, not cheap, inexpensive, and you don't have to drill holes in your walls and all of that kind of stuff, and the wife's not going to get mad. I think that's kind of a cool thing.
Well, it seems like we're kind of circling back to the home theater,
yes.
aren't we?
Why not?
Right. Yeah. And in the past, the home theaters had to be customized, but now...
Yes, a little bit easier.
Yeah.
It's interesting with that as well, because in our world, we're also dealing with a lot of people are watching entertainment on their computer or their iPads, and I know especially the younger generation. I have a 19-year-old son, and he pretty much watches everything on his iPad or whatever. So
exactly.
we have to still make sure that our mixes are translating to that format, and so we're almost being asked to do more within the same time, and so you really have to think through things and how it's going to translate to all the deliveries that you have to make.
Yes.
Immersive sound is happening all over the place.
Yes.
I mean, there are companies that are creating immersive sound, binaurally for your headphones. And granted, that started in the gaming industry, but it's true of high-end broadcast. It's true of feature films. And I've lived in the feature film world for a long time. I'm excited by it.
It is, and as you pointed out, I mean, these are going to be distributed to all different kinds of platforms than we used to have, but they're improving their audio capabilities as well.
Yeah, and there are opportunities.
And yes.
Yeah, like virtual reality, all the goggles and all that stuff. Westworld had a virtual reality experience when the show was first starting to air.
Right.
You could go and do that. So I mean, what I've seen and heard in that world is fantastic. So I mean, there's all kinds of new opportunities coming up with immersive sound.
Yeah, and it really sounds like audio is really kind of coming into its own. I mean, I'm hoping that it'll get the respect that it deserves, and the attention. I mean, because we pay attention to it, but we don't notice it's subliminal, a lot of it, isn't
Sure.
it? Yeah.
And you know, I mean, the award system, you know, whether it's you know, the Emmys or the Academy Awards or MPSC or CAS, I mean, there is recognition, and recognition is vital to the state of the art.
And do you both feel that, I mean, that your clients respect and understand the importance of audio to their projects?
God, yes. Yeah.
I mean, producers and directors know that it makes or breaks their films. I mean, a lot of times, so much emotion is told through sound. Music, you know what music does to it. Anybody just listening to a favorite song or whatever, what it creates within you, that same kind of reality in a show. You know, a really good score or a really good soundtrack can really change a show. You know, it really is a huge part.
Well, I think that's it's really exciting. I'm really excited for you guys. I think that VR in particular is going to really raise the profile of audio, since it's used so much as to let you know which way to turn, right?
It will be interesting.
It will be very, very interesting.
Yes.
So thank you very much. I want to thank both of you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and letting us know about audio.
Thanks for having us.
And okay, it's my pleasure.
Yeah,
so what are you working on now? Anything of interest that you can talk about?
Can we talk about it?
I think so. I'm working on a Stephen King project called Mr. Mercedes for DirecTV.
DirecTV.
Yeah.
Who'da thunk it?
Who'da thunk it?
Who'da
Exactly.
thunk it?
The Audience Network, AT&T. It's all kind of I'm not sure what they're exactly calling it, but that's the current project I'm working on at the moment. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to seeing it. Thank you again, Keith and Paul, for joining us here and illuminating us on audio.
Our pleasure.
We're going to be taking a little break right now. Come back and join us on NAB Live.
Hey, what's going on? Jamie Alexander here with Broadcast Beat, and I'm here at Gear House with my buddy Mark. How are you, Mark?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Really excited to be here. So as you guys can see, we're in some sort of a warehouse situation, but we're gonna break it down for you. We're in front of this large mobile unit, and Mark, I want you to tell us all about what this is and why it was important for you to create this.
We needed to up the ante for the latest technology, which currently is 4K. Because of the complexity, the amount of sources, the amount of machinery needed to make this stuff happen, we had to go to something that was built with exactly the same materials as super yachts are made from, which is Columbus, which is a 4K truck right here. Needed to make this truck has a number of features in it that are very different to your typical truck you'll find in North America. Normally on the old trucks you crank things up with a handle, and basically two guys after about 45 minutes get very strong arms doing this to both lift the truck off the ground and pop out what we call an expando, which is this part of the truck. So what happens on this one is, going underneath, I will pull this out, we have a remote control, and what this remote control does is we stand off, we hit a button, and this truck deploys 4 hydraulic legs, and then the whole truck lifts itself off the ground. When it's happy that it's level, it pops this side out here by itself, and the floor folds down. And this truck deploys...
Okay, this looks great. So this is the recording area. What makes this different and special on this mobile unit?
We utilize EVS, who are a well-known survey company, and what they do is these machines enable us to record multiple sources of 4K or HD, and we're able to record them so the client can walk away with their own hard drives of what we recorded all day. But more importantly, or as importantly, we also do replays here. These are typically generated at a station like this. What makes this different is that we're able to move these stations anywhere around this truck. And that is mainly thanks to a system we've implicated in full here called VSM. So VSM is made by a German company called Lavo. What's important about that is this truck has so many sources, video and audio coming into it. We handle 4,096 by 4,096 audio cross points, and then close to 1,000 video cross points. A human being is in charge of all this, and we kind of got to the point where honestly we're kind of asking too much of a guy, as you could imagine.
Right.
So we have a brain that sits over all this called VSM that enables us, once we've told the brain how many sources there are, what they do, where they go, video and audio, and if you add all that up, and I just told you, you're looking at like 5,000 by 5,000 sources. A guy has to tell the brain at the beginning what these sources are, and once it's in, and that took us quite a long time to do, but the beauty of it now is when we want to move any source to somewhere else, and even change the way the panels are configured, so if someone's used to it a certain way and they want to move either down there or down the back end of the truck where we're going after, or anywhere in this truck, we just press a button and all of a sudden they get the same layout in front of them, they get the same panels, and we can do that very, very quickly and easily. And that makes people happy. The truck where we're going after. Effectively, this is a 15-person control room. Again, because of what I said earlier on about VSM and the way that we can manipulate and move easily certain positions, working positions, operational positions around the truck, we've kind of given people a palette, for want of a better word, of a production palette. So they walk in and we go, who do you want where? We're not telling them where they go.
Yes.
And that's a big, big difference.
So this monitor wall is pretty amazing. Is this in 4K also?
Yes, it is. This happens to be the only all 4K monitor wall currently in North America that we know of. We've done our research, so I think it's safe to say it.
Thank you so much for spending your time showing us this remarkable creation. And
Not at all.
gosh, so much more to come, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, keep them peeled for sure.
Okay.
Las Vegas, this is NAB Show Live, produced by Broadcast Beat.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Janet West, and I'm delighted to welcome you back to NAB Show Live here in Las Vegas. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about remote broadcasting. I've got four gentlemen here who know an awful lot more about it than I do. So I'm going to start by introducing. This guy's not my co-host, by the way. We just ran out of chairs. So I've got Joep Jensen, who's the CEO from Aperi. And to his right is Bob Bush, who is Sales Director for Multidyne Electronics. And next to him is Michel Baes, who is Managing Director of Mobile Viewpoint. And finally, but not last, is Martin Paskin, who is the Systems Integration Manager from Gearhouse. Now guys, it's a long time since I worked with Canadian Broadcasting and we had our first HD truck. A lot of things have happened since then. So what technology today is enabling remote production, and what are the challenges that you're finding?
Well, the key to remote production and make it efficient is actually IP. So open standard Ethernet to use all the telecom and data center practices on a long distance to get the live pictures back and to do the programming remotely.
Okay.
Yeah, to make it low cost, of course. You see that, of course, there is less and less money available in live television, so we also see a lot of need for low cost transmission equipment, not only satellite vehicles, but also the IP bonding technology we make, and also that you integrate quite low cost directly to social media.
Okay.
I think the key thing is trying to work out what it is that you're trying to achieve with remote production. So technology is an enabler to the remote production, but we need to identify exactly what's required from a production processes enable to do that remote production, and what the requirements are around why we want to do remote production. And then once we've understood those things, then we use the different technologies that are available, of which there's a huge amount. We've had IP technology around for years, having links coming back from the remote production to the studio, but now we're seeing people wanting to do lesser sports events, which never used to be on, that now being put onto video on demand services, and we're seeing people want to reduce their operation costs as well. So it's trying to understand what those key drivers are for remote production, and then how we as technologists can put that forward into to what it is that we propose.
Are dedicated appliances better than streaming apps?
Yes, because you make them. I'll be sure it is. When you check, for example, an app on your iPhone and you film live with it, like Periscope, it's okay, but it's not great. You get hicks and freezes, and also your audience gets tired with it. So as a production company, you see, you have to invest a little bit more money to get a good quality video out there, because although people accept lesser quality, they don't accept hicks and freezes and audio stutters.
Yes, but I think we need to clarify what apps are, right?
Right.
So Aperi is a company that actually makes a real-time platform in software that you process all the encoders, decoders, all the switching that you need to do live, all in the native IP domain, and all real-time.
What do you actually mean by native IP infrastructure?
Well, that maybe the camera has still an SDI output, but then the moment it goes into your processing devices, appliances, that actually it's converted once to IP, and it stays in IP all the way maybe to the monitor with an HDMI legacy output. But the processing, the switching, the DVE effects, all those, the multi-viewers, all is natively in IP. And what we promote with Aperi, which means open in Latin, is use the open Ethernet standards for all of that. And what we have shown last year at the Euros, the soccer championships, that actually live 4K remote production on 600 kilometers, you can actually do fully real time and do all the processing in software. So, and we call that apps. So it's not the app of an iPhone, obviously, but it's a professional app, and you can change the 4K camera formats on the fly to do a next remote production somewhere else in the world.
Right. What happens and what are the challenges for multi-venue productions?
The challenge is to get enough bandwidth, I think, on location. But sometimes people really think that an ADSL modem or a cable modem is enough. Yeah, downstream, but when you want to go upstream, there's a big issue suddenly. So there's a lot of people make mistakes over there, and then suddenly they still need to gear in satellite connectivity to get enough IP bandwidth, to do a satellite IP connection to get good production. So that's something people overlook, that there is really need for some bandwidth on the location, which you won't find in Syria, of course, for example.
Yeah. Michel, you mentioned earlier about cost, and I think whether it's remote broadcasting or anything these days, everybody's interested in cost. But where is the major cost when you're dealing with IP production? Is it that we're reducing costs with smaller trucks, or?
Yeah, personnel and gear, of course. You need less personnel when you can do remote production. You don't need a switcher anymore in the field. You can do it remotely. So you only need a cameraman and a presenter like over here, and everything can be done 600 kilometers away, indeed.
Yeah.
So you're saving personnel and equipment, definitely.
Okay. Any other comments on cost?
It's very difficult at the moment because we're seeing new technologies coming in which are still fairly expensive. We're having to use very expensive IT switch fabric.
Yeah.
So at the moment, some of the costs associated with some of the infrastructure may be slightly higher, but then that's being offset by some of the other costs which are being reduced, number of staff on site. The other thing is how you utilize your resources. So if you've got a vision mixer, there are a number of people who are looking at utilizing their resources, vision mixers, EVSs, graphics, for instance, where they may be able to centralize those and then be able to move those from one event to another event to another event. So it's very difficult to try and work out where those costs are, because it's not a simple, it's just in this one OB truck or it's just on this one event. And then the other issues are, you may have your connectivity for one event between site A and site B, but then when you want to take that to somewhere else, there are other costs associated with maybe getting the last mile of connectivity, or you may want to take that on to another country, for instance, and connectivity changes there. So there's a lot of challenges for both the operational teams and the technology teams to make this work.
Yeah, I think it comes down to cost and bandwidth availability for your infrastructure.
Okay. If you're, remote and you're transmitting a signal, for example, just from news or a single plan production, what else is involved when you're including social media and other ways?
What we see is also what you think about is do processing in the backend like transcoding. For example, when you go directly to YouTube and Facebook, but also to Periscope. Periscope only accepts 800 kilobits at high resolution, but it doesn't look awful, to be honest. So you have to do really very good post-processing to get your high-quality source from the field into such a social media stream. And we try to enable that with high-quality transcoding equipment, also cloud-based. But that's one of the challenges I see. When you look at the social media streams, the quality is sometimes really doubtful what you have to look at.
Yeah, and there's so many different formats that you have to deal with for all the different flavors of social media that you have to put out there for.
Social media was one of the interesting things which were picked up in a recent SVG conference in the UK, where there was a panel with production assistants on there. And part of the discussion went down the route of having less people at a venue, particularly at a sports venue. And conversely, they were saying that there was a need for social media people who can get their signals and everything back at the studios, but they were actually having to find more space in the OB trucks so that social media people can be out in the field as well. So again, it's a case of looking at the production processes and production values of the organizations as to what it is that's important to them. So it is actually putting challenges and adding pressure to some of the OB companies like ourselves.
But the social media side is already in our IP.
Yeah.
So if we talk about remote production side also going to IP, you make one translation step less in the whole process, and you could be a lot more efficient and flexible and do probably more with less if you can do the whole chain in IP.
Okay.
So it also is an interesting point in the social media today, is who's first. Because what you see today, if you're the first, and everybody links to you, to your Twitter account or to your Facebook page. So what you see is also a challenge for a lot of production companies is how I am enabled, I'm the first one to post my nice content. So if I produce Formula One, when my neighbor posts on his Facebook, he gets all the hooks and all the links. So that's also a challenge we also try to solve with our software, that you can be within 30 seconds you get your clip live on your Facebook. So everybody links to you with your Max Verstappen crash or whatever.
Okay. I've heard the expression live video of a bonded IP. What do you mean by that?
That's technology we use. What we use with bonding is that you take several IP channels together in one big IP channel. And that ensures high quality but also a kind of redundancy. So if one IP channel fails, you automatically use the other one more. So we bond quite a lot of times satellite IP with just 3G, 4G IP. You see that also to lower the production cost, people go over IP satellite like KA in Europe. But that's not always that stable due to rain fading or clouds or whatever. So you need to have a kind of second bonded channel to ensure that you keep stability in your production.
Okay. We talked yesterday in one of my shows on virtualized playout. What can you tell me about virtualized production for remote production?
It's basically doing the same thing, is that you spin up channels and formats and scalers and etc. in software, and when you don't need them, you spin them down and you haven't brought any new equipment on or you did any recabling. So in production you can do that now as well. So, but you need real-time platforms to do that, while the playout is less real-time. If you do a second to do a transcoding, that's all right, as long as all the channels are delayed with 1 second. In live production, you don't have that second. You need to be in milliseconds ready. And that's kind of the next step. And coming back to the cost of remote production, so instead of driving with your trucks to all the venues one by one, that's very costly. If you have an IP infrastructure, an IP network, and actually you don't have to use the software to run that infrastructure for that match, because there is at that venue no match, and you don't pay for it. So virtualization gives you also an enormous cost benefit, that if you, for example, and that's breaking news for the NAB show for us, together with our partner Ericsson, we are going to, over the summer, have a 30 stadium plus implementation of remote production somewhere in the world, I cannot say where, that will be completely networked up. But actually the broadcaster, the sports broadcaster, who is a global player, only has 5 matches at the same time. And so they are only paying for the infrastructure for the 5 matches. Although the next match could be somewhere else, but then the floating licenses move and the costs move with that match. So they don't have to pay all the time for 30 installations.
Oh, okay, I see.
So that is an enormous cost benefit for if you go into software processing rather than the hardware processing that we have today.
I remember when I was involved in remote broadcasting, actually in Belgium, next door to Amsterdam, a few years ago. There was one problem that not a lot of places were equipped with fibre. Is that a problem today, or is it most of the places equipped with fibre?
It depends where you're looking at. We've done some carried out some proof of concepts. We worked with Aperi for the Euros in France, which is extremely well catered for with fibre. But then we've carried out some other proof of concepts, like in Australia, where the last bits have been a problem, and we've had to use packet IP to make the last elements of it work. So. It's not quite as simple as saying we've got dark fibre from point to point. Equally, there are some countries in the world that don't allow you to actually have dark fibre from point to point for political reasons. Therefore, you have to use packetized IP over those connectivities. So they're real challenges that we all have to think about when we're designing solutions for various people, because it depends on where around the world they're going to be. You can't design a system which is just going to work on dark fibre, because they may make a decision to do another event somewhere else. And just literally, like I said before, getting that last mile can actually be a real problem.
What are the advantages of using a high data rate for, the advantages of fibre when you're using a high data rate?
Well, the whole point is, how many signals do you want coming back? Are we doing something in HD? Are we doing something in 4K? How much compression do we want to put on the signal to go from point A to B? How many signals do we actually want to get back? Some of the broadcasters I've been talking about who are really looking into doing real live remote production, they started off simply by thinking, we need to bring back all the cameras in HD. It says, well, do you really need to do that? Well, that's our biggest problem because of the cost of doing that. But there are other ways of doing this. We shouldn't necessarily look at remote production in the same way we would do a traditional production at the moment. So we may look at thinking about bringing back multi-viewer screens back, and maybe only 1 or 2 HDs. We might be looking at some things actually coming back in SD, where sound monitoring, for instance, doesn't need to be in HD, but actually they're really interested in the latency issues. So there's a lot of different things for different members of the production crew that need to be catered for.
Also your target audience. Do you want to go only on the social, or do you really want to go on TV on high quality? So, sports events require high bandwidth, high quality. But a very basic thing like a bicycle or a bicycle race with a lot of movement can also be a little bit lower.
Yeah, you can take fiber, a single fiber, and put literally hundreds of signals over it, and that can be 12 gig. You can be just about anything. It can be your audio, it can be your data, it can be IP as well. So that can go extended distances where you're just not going to accomplish that over copper, and you won't have any kind of the latency issues like you have over IP.
So you mentioned going back to SD, but we've been talking 4K and they're still talking 8K. What's that going to do to the remote broadcasting industry?
Well, that may
a headache or an opportunity?
No, it's an opportunity because there are compression algorithms that take a visually lossless 4K signal into the existing bandwidth of 10 gig or even lower. So I think that's manageable. 8K is another story. That's we need to go to the higher bandwidth is on the network, but 4K is absolutely no problem at all. And frankly, the 30 plus stadium project that I just mentioned will use 4K, quite a few, and bring that all back in 4K quality to the production hubs.
Right. Okay. What are the advantages? I seem to get loads of acronyms from my panelists. What is CWDM?
That's coarse wave division multiplexing.
Okay.
Basically,
what is that?
Easy way to think about that is you've got different wavelengths of light, or essentially colors of light. So what you're doing is you're putting different signals. Camera 1, camera 2, camera 3 are on different colors of light, and then you take those through a filter and it muxes them onto a single fiber. And you can do that with your audio, with your data, but just about any type of signal. So that's where you can literally, in a combination with time domain multiplexing, you can actually get a vast number of signals over a single piece of fiber.
Okay. So that presumably is an advantage to you guys or the customer?
I think probably both, because it eliminates, the need for a big snake bundle of cables where you used to have one with productions down to really, knocks down the number of cables you need to roll out, because you can put so many signals, the density of it over a single piece of fiber.
Okay, something close to my heart is sustainability in this world of electronics. What's happening with respect to design of outside broadcast trucks, etc., to be more sustainable? I know the BBC were looking at trying to make a sustainable OB truck.
Well, if you have a remote production network, then less equipment needs to be at the venue. You still need the cameras.
You still got to have a truck for the cameras.
You still, and maybe you want, even for the high-profile matches, you still want the production crew to be actually locally at the stadium. But most of the equipment, 95% of equipment, can actually be in one central place, because the network will do all the processing for you. So you save a lot in weight and in size of equipment, and you could make a beautiful production environment, very creative. Add the social media crowd that maybe wants to better engage with the whole production during the match. So it creates all kind of new opportunities. But the truck will be a lot lighter, and the equipment, you only need that if you have 5 matches at the same time. You need for 5 matches equipment, but if you have to truck that around in the past, you need a lot more than that. So you save a lot of equipment as well.
From a system integration perspective, it's very interesting times at the moment, because we're still seeing an awful lot of tenders coming in for traditional standard broadcast OB trucks. There's still a nervousness into moving into IP, even though there are a number of IP trucks that have actually been delivered. And particularly in the US, we've seen more of a requirement from the OB companies and the broadcasting and the SIs in the States, asking for 12G SDI, because there's still a nervousness about OB vehicles with using for UHD. In fact, Gearhouse Broadcasters just built a UHD truck for the US, for our US office in LA, which is based on quad SDI. So there are still traditional vehicles being made, but at the same time, there's a lot of people looking to the future. How can I future-proof my vehicle? How can I build something which is for HD today, but I want to build it up and still use it in maybe 5 years' time for UHD, particularly where sports is around. Yeah. Indeed. So this is where the idea of maybe either a hybrid vehicle or moving into the IP domain has worked. BT in the UK has been very much on the forefront of what's going on, and they've had 2, and they're now on their 3rd OB truck, which is all IP. So it's a very mixed world, very interesting world. There's a lot of people who need to learn about this technology, because it's changing for all of us.
Talking which, learning about it, education, do we have the skill set amongst technicians and engineers to deal with this? Or have we got a problem?
That's the real issue.
Yeah.
It's the people and the know-how in the industry.
So how are we going to solve that? Because this has come up in a couple of sessions, trying to, with the changing times in our industry, how do we get the right skill set?
Have more of these sessions, for
More
example.
of these sessions, okay, great.
Absolutely.
I'm hired.
I think the biggest issues, we've all had IT switches in our infrastructures, but nobody's ever had to learn to use serious data center switches unless you're looking at things like media asset management centers in large production facilities. If you're now putting that into an OB truck, you've got to skill up people to understand and actually not be afraid, because actually it's not that difficult. Once you learn what you need to know about it, and also making the facility resilient. So you're not going to stick one IT switch in. You're going to stick at least 2 IT switches in to make the facility work. Where it really matters is how we do control and monitoring, and there's still a lack of decent control and monitoring tools out there to make the engineers, the broadcast engineers at the moment, confident with what they're actually looking at. And it's all right saying, I'm going to look at this multicast here and excuse me, and look at that multicast that's coming into the switch and look at that on a monitor, but actually I want to look at the output. So there's a lot of understanding around their infrastructure that they need to do.
This has been, I'm really sorry, Michelle, we're running out of time. This has been a really interesting conversation. I'd love to have continued. So I'd really like to thank my guests, Bob Bush, Joep Janssen, Martin Faskin, and Michelle Baez. And thanks very much for joining us. Stay with us, guys, because in a few minutes we will be talking about media logistics. I'm Janet West, and see you in a few. Take a break.